The kitten appeared on a dry autumn afternoon, on the kind of street where nothing ever seemed to happen fast enough to make the evening news. Adelaide's suburbs have a particular stillness in late April, the kind that settles into the air like warm tea into a mug. The wind that day carried the sweet, sharp scent of eucalyptus from backyard trees, pushing dried leaves in lazy spirals across the pavement. Houses lined the block with their low timber fences, terracotta pots sitting faithful on verandas, bicycles leaning against walls like tired children. Everyone on that street knew everyone else's business. What time old Mr. Hargrove walked his beagle, which house had the best lemon tree, whose bins were always out a day early. The local Facebook group buzzed with the ordinary rhythm of suburban life. Someone's sprinkler had been running since Tuesday. A family 2 doors down was selling a second-hand trampoline. A woman named Deb had baked too many lamingtons for a school fundraiser and was offering the extras to anyone who knocked before 5. Into this calm, unremarkable scene, a small cat walked. He was not filthy enough to be a stray. His coat, a patchwork of grey and soft amber, still held a faint shine that spoke of someone's care, someone's kitchen, someone's lap. But he was not confident enough to be merely curious either. He moved a few meters forward, stopped, lifted his nose to the breeze, turned his head as if listening for a sound that had not yet arrived, then picked a direction and almost immediately changed his mind. He did this again and again. 3 things about this kitten were impossible to ignore. First, his attention. He noticed details no ordinary wandering cat would bother with. The creak of a gate hinge, the hum of a transformer on a power pole, the distant rattle of a wheelie bin being dragged to the curb. His ears rotated like tiny satellite dishes, scanning, sorting, discarding sounds that did not match whatever signal he was searching for. Second, his persistence. Twice he startled at a car door slamming and bolted under a hedge, only to emerge moments later, shake himself, and resume his slow, uncertain patrol. He did not give up. He simply reset and tried again, as if something inside him insisted that the right path existed and he would find it if he just kept walking. The third, his caution. He wanted to trust. That much was clear from the way he paused near open gates, the way his body leaned toward warmth and sound. But something held him back, a thin wire of instinct stretched tight across his small chest, saying not yet, not yet, not yet. It was Ainsley Torr who found him. Ainsley was 37, compact and quick, with sun-freckled arms and a ponytail that always seemed to be coming undone. She had volunteered with a small local rescue group for 6 years, long enough to know the difference between a cat enjoying an adventure and a cat in trouble. She had been heading to check on a possum box installation 2 streets over when she noticed the kitten sitting in the middle of the sidewalk. Once were transessei, damn, not hiding, not running, just sitting there with an expression that struck her, absurdly, as embarrassed. As if he knew he was lost and felt foolish about it. She crouched, slowly, knees on warm concrete, hands loose and low. "Hey, little one," she murmured. "You look like you've got somewhere to be." He did not run. Instead, he took 3 careful steps toward her, stopped, looked back over his shoulder, and let out a single short meow. It was not a plea. It was not a greeting. It was directional. He was pointing at something behind him with his whole body. Ainsley frowned. "What's back there?" The kitten turned, walked 4 more paces, stopped again, and looked at her. When she did not move, he came back, repeated the gesture, and advanced once more. He was not asking to be held. He was asking to be followed. She stood up, brushed grit from her knees, and made a decision that would cost her the rest of her afternoon and most of her peace of mind for the next 3 days. She followed him. What came next was an exercise in patience that would have broken most people inside 20 minutes. The kitten led her down one side street, then doubled back. He paused at a brick letterbox, sniffed it intensely, appeared to recognize something, then lost interest. He turned left at a jacaranda tree that had already shed its flowers, veered right past a parked white ute, and then, for no visible reason, changed direction entirely. Twice, he nearly darted into the wrong yard, chasing a scent or a memory that dissolved before it became useful. Ainsley followed, step by careful step, resisting every urge to scoop him up and carry him somewhere safe. The hardest moment came when he vanished beneath a dusty ute parked halfway onto the grass. Ainsley dropped to her knees on the hot asphalt, cheek nearly touching the ground, and called softly, her voice steady even though her heart hammered in her ears. "Come on, mate. Come on out." Silence, the smell of engine oil and warm rubber, a magpie warbling from a power line, indifferent. Then, a small grey face appeared near the rear tire, blinking. The kitten looked, if a cat could look such a thing, frustrated with himself, as if he understood that his own confusion was the enemy and he could not outrun it. Ainsley reached slowly into her pocket and pulled out a small pouch of treats she always carried. She placed one on the ground, 6 inches from her hand. He came out. He ate the treat. He sat beside her shoe and stared up the street with the expression of someone who has just realized they have been walking in circles. "All right," Ainsley said quietly. "That's enough for today. Let's get you somewhere safe." She lifted him. He did not struggle. His body went soft in her hands, not with trust, but with exhaustion. The fight had drained out of him, at least for now. She could feel his ribs through the thin coat and his heartbeat tapping against her palm. Quick, light, constant, like a small clock running just slightly too fast. That evening, in the spare room of her house that served as an improvised foster space, the first real clue surfaced. Ainsley set down a bowl of standard dry kibble. The kitten approached, sniffed, and walked away. He showed zero interest. She tried a different brand. Same result. Then, on a hunch, she warmed a small piece of plain chicken breast in the microwave, shredded it, and placed the dish on the floor. He was eating before she had straightened up. This was not a stray. This was a house cat, fed particular food by particular hands. Someone, somewhere, was missing him. Later, as the room darkened and the yellow glow of a streetlight seeped through the blinds, the kitten did something that made Ainsley pause in the doorway. Instead of hiding under the bed, a behavior she had seen in hundreds of frightened rescues, he jumped onto the windowsill and sat perfectly still. He watched the headlights of passing cars slide across the ceiling. Every time the distant screech of a bus brake reached the house, his ears shot forward. When the faint, tinny sound of the church bell 3 blocks away drifted through the glass, his whole body tensed. He was not just frightened, he was listening for his life, for the soundtrack of wherever home was. Ainsley leaned against the doorframe and crossed her arms, a knot forming in her chest that she recognized from years of this work. The knot that said, "This one is going to be complicated." "I'll find them," she whispered. "I promise." The kitten did not look at her. He kept his eyes on the street, ears tilted forward, waiting for a sound that had not come yet. Morning arrived with the clean, pale light that Adelaide does so well in autumn, the kind that makes everything look freshly rinsed. Ainsley had barely finished her first cup of tea when she began the process she knew by heart. She posted on 3 local Facebook groups, each message accompanied by 2 photos of the kitten, one showing his face in natural light, the other capturing the pattern of grey and amber across his back. She worded the posts carefully, giving enough detail to be useful, but holding back certain specifics. A trick she had learned the hard way. You never described every marking. You never mentioned the exact location. You kept a few facts in reserve, the kind only a real owner would know, because grief made people do strange things, and not everyone who claimed a lost animal truly deserved one. She called 4 veterinary clinics in the area. None had a matching report. She dropped a printed flyer at the primary school on Green Hill Road, where parents gathered twice a day and gossip traveled faster than email. She pinned another copy at the pet supply shop on the corner, next to a faded card advertising dog walking services and a handwritten note about a missing cockatiel named Gerald. She checked his ears for a microchip tattoo. Nothing visible. A proper scan would have to wait for the vet appointment she had booked for the following morning. By noon, silence. No calls, no messages. The kitten sat on the windowsill again, watching the world with an intensity that made the quiet in the room feel louder. Ainsley cleaned the litter tray, refreshed the water bowl, and sat on the floor with her back against the bed frame. She was not a woman who panicked easily. Years of rescue work had given her a steadiness that most people mistook for detachment. But beneath that calm, something old was stirring. 4 years earlier, she had made a mistake she still carried. A tabby cat, found near a shopping center, had been claimed within hours by a woman who wept so convincingly that Ainsley handed the animal over without completing the full verification. 2 days later, the real owner called. The tabby had a microchip. The weeping woman was a stranger who had recently lost her own cat and, desperate for comfort, had seen the post and convinced herself that this one was hers. The real owner got the cat back eventually, but the memory of that handoff, the look on the real owner's face, the guilt that sat in Ainsley's stomach for weeks, never fully left. She had promised herself then, never again, never rush a reunion, never let emotion override evidence. Now, sitting on the floor with this small grey and amber kitten studying the street from his perch, she felt that old promise pressing against her ribs like a second heartbeat. "We do this right," she said to herself more than to him. No shortcuts. On the second afternoon, a delivery driver named Kitten stopped Ainsley outside the pet supply shop. He was a tall, sunburned man with a habit of noticing things most people missed, a professional requirement when you spent 8 hours a day navigating suburban streets. "That kitten in the photos," he said, shifting a parcel under his arm. "I reckon I've seen one like it. Couple of streets over, near the greenhouse on Waverley Lane. You know the one. Sage green, big rosemary bush out front." Ainsley knew it, or at least, she knew the general area. "He was hanging around the front steps a few days back," Kitten continued. "Looked comfortable, like he belonged. But I couldn't swear it's the same cat. It was thin. But in rescue work, thin leads were all you ever got." She thanked Kitten, went home, placed the kitten gently into a soft carrier lined with a towel, and drove to Waverley Lane. The house was exactly as Kitten had described: sage green weatherboard, a rosemary bush so large it had colonized half the front path, a brass door knocker shaped like a pineapple, and curtains that looked like they had not been changed since the early 90s. The garden was tidy but spare, one of those gardens that belong to someone who cares about order but no longer has the energy for abundance. Ainsley lifted the carrier from the car. The moment the kitten's paws touched the front path, something shifted. His body language changed, a subtle loosening of the shoulders, a drop in the tail from alert to relaxed. He walked, not ran, up the 2 stone steps to the porch. He sniffed the wooden railing with slow, deliberate attention. He sat down in front of the door and looked up at it with an expression so calm, so certain, that Ainsley felt the knot in her chest begin to loosen. This was it. This had to be it. She knocked. The door opened and a woman appeared. Mirelle Quaid was somewhere past 70, with silver hair pinned in a loose twist and reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain around her neck. She wore a cardigan the color of oatmeal and soft house shoes that whispered on the floorboards. Behind her, the hallway stretched into warm shadow, the scent of lavender and old paper drifting outward like a sigh. When she saw the kitten, her hands flew to her mouth. Her eyes filled instantly. "Oh," she breathed. "Oh, you came back." She lowered herself carefully, one hand on the doorframe for balance, and extended her fingers. The kitten sniffed them, then stepped inside. He circled the living room with purpose. The floral sofa, the oak side table with its stack of crossword puzzle books, the radio on the kitchen counter that murmured softly to itself. He jumped onto the sofa, kneaded the cushion once, and curled beside a wool throw blanket draped over the armrest. Mirelle was crying, not loudly, not theatrically. The tears simply rolled, one after another, down cheeks that had clearly known their share of quiet evenings. "His name is Briar," she said, pressing a tissue to her nose. "He disappeared 5 days ago. I thought I had lost him for good." Ainsley should have felt triumphant. The kitten was calm. The woman was emotional. The house felt right. The neighborhood would celebrate. And it did. Within an hour, the Facebook group erupted. Heart emojis, exclamation points. A neighbor named Peg arrived at the door carrying a plate of scones so fresh they were still steaming, and Mirelle invited her in, and the 2 women sat at the kitchen table while the kitten slept on the sofa, and Ainsley stood in the hallway and allowed herself to smile. Almost, because even in the middle of that warm, golden scene, 3 small details kept snagging at the edge of her attention, like a thread pulled loose from an otherwise perfect sweater. 1, Mirelle had called him Briar. The kitten had not reacted to the name, not even a flick of the ear. 2, He had fallen asleep on the sofa within minutes, but woke suddenly, startled, and stared at the hallway as if expecting someone else to walk through it. 3. Twice before Ainsley left, the kitten padded to the front door and sat there, not scratching, not meowing, just looking out through the glass panel toward the street with an expression she had seen too many times to misread. It was the look of an animal that had not yet arrived where it was going. Ainsley drove home slowly, windows down, the cool evening air filling the car with the scent of someone's backyard barbecue and the distant sweetness of jasmine. She told herself she was overthinking it. She told herself the kitten was probably just adjusting. She told herself that not every reunion had to be cinematic to be real. But the thread kept pulling, and by the time she turned into her own driveway and cut the engine, the knot in her chest had returned, tighter than before. The sky that evening turned the color of burnt apricot, a shade so particular to South Australia that people who moved away sometimes said it was the thing they missed most. The light came in low and slow through Ainsley's kitchen window as she stood at the counter filling the kettle, trying to convince herself that the job was done. Her phone rang. The screen showed a number she did not recognize. She considered letting it go to voicemail. She had spent 2 days on this case and had a stack of other rescue matters waiting, a possum relocation, a call about an injured lorikeet near the Oval, paperwork that had been sitting untouched since Monday. But something, call it instinct, call it the thread that would not stop pulling. The Nerissa twice made her answer. Hello? The voice on the other end was quiet and slightly unsteady, the way a person sounds when they have rehearsed what they want to say but cannot quite manage it now that the moment has arrived. My name is Thea Sloan. I think you may have found our cat. Ainsley leaned against the counter. I posted about a kitten a couple of days ago. Grey and amber found near Green Hill Road, yes. I saw the post this afternoon. A friend shared it. I would have called sooner, but we've been looking in the wrong part of town. Someone told us they saw him near the Oval on the other side of the city, and we spent 2 days searching over there. Ainsley reached for her notebook. Can you describe him for me? What followed made the hair on her arms stand up. Thea did not describe the kitten from the photos. She described him from life. She mentioned a small dark marking hidden on the inside of his left hind leg, a detail invisible in any photograph Ainsley had posted. She described the way he always pushed at the surface of his water with one paw before drinking, as if testing it. She mentioned his fear of the vacuum cleaner, so specific that she imitated the high-pitched whine he made when he heard it start. And then she described his sleeping posture, fully stretched out, legs extended, belly exposed, a position that looked less like rest and more like a cat who never quite learned to let go of the day. Every detail matched. Ainsley set down the notebook. Her hand was not quite steady. Mrs. Sloan. Thea, please. Thea, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear the whole thing before you respond. She told her. All of it. The search, the delivery driver's tip, the sage green house, Morel's tears, the kitten on the sofa, and the quiet, persistent signs that something was not right. The silence on the other end lasted long enough for Ainsley to hear a clock ticking somewhere in Thea's house. He's at the wrong home, Thea finally said. It was not a question. I think he might be, but I need to be sure. I need you to send me everything you have. Photos, vet records, videos, anything that proves he's yours beyond any doubt. Can you do that? I'll have it to you within the hour. When the call ended, Ainsley sat down at her kitchen table and pressed both palms flat against the wood, as if steadying a boat in rough water. The kettle clicked off behind her. She did not pour the tea. She thought about Morel, about the way the older woman had pressed the tissue to her nose and said his name with such certainty, about the scones, about the crossword books and the radio murmuring in the kitchen and the quiet house that had been waiting, just waiting, for something alive to fill it again. And she thought about Thea, about the description that fit like a key in a lock, about the 2 days spent searching the wrong suburb, about the voice that trembled not with hysteria, but with the controlled fear of someone who had been trying very hard to hold herself together. Both women were telling the truth as they understood it. That was the cruelest part. The files arrived 43 minutes later. Ainsley opened them on her laptop one by one. A vet receipt from a clinic in Prospect, dated 3 months prior. A video of a small grey and amber kitten batting at a crinkled ball of paper across a kitchen floor while a child's laughter rang in the background. A photograph of the same kitten asleep on a blue cushion, legs stretched out in that unmistakable, fully extended pose Thea had described. And a close-up, slightly blurry, of the inside of a hind leg, showing a dark smudge, no bigger than a thumbprint. Ainsley closed the laptop. She sat very still for a long time. Then she opened it again, pulled up Mirel's contact, and began to type a message, deleting it 3 times before finding words that felt honest without being brutal. She needed to visit Mirel again. She needed to visit Thea, and before either of those things happened, she needed to prepare herself for the possibility that doing the right thing was going to break someone's heart. What she did not yet know was that the hardest part would not be the conversation with Mirel or the paperwork or the verification. The hardest part would come the next morning, in a moment of pure chaos on a quiet suburban street, when the kitten would make one last bid for freedom, and everything would nearly fall apart. The next morning was overcast, a low, soft ceiling of cloud that made the world feel closer to the ground. Ainsley arrived at Mirel's house at 9 o'clock, carrying a folder of printed documents and a feeling in her stomach like she had swallowed a stone. Mirel opened the door in the same oatmeal cardigan. The radio was still on in the kitchen. The kitten sat on the sofa, watching. "I had a feeling," Mirel said before Ainsley could speak. She stepped back to let her in and gestured toward the kettle. "Tea?" They sat at the kitchen table. Ainsley laid out the evidence as gently as she could. The vet records, the video, the photograph of the marking on the hind leg. She explained about Thea's call. She explained the details no one could have guessed from a Facebook post. Mirel listened without interrupting. She held her teacup with both hands, the way people do when they need something to anchor them. When Ainsley finished, the older woman was quiet for a long moment. The radio played a song from another decade, something with strings and a gentle tempo that filled the silence like a soft curtain. "I did lose a cat," Mirel said at last. "A ginger one, Oliver. He was old. He wandered off one evening and never came back. The vet said it happens, that sometimes they go somewhere quiet when they know." She paused. "When I saw this little one on the steps, I thought the universe was giving me a second chance." Her voice did not crack. It simply went thin, like paper held up to light. "He never responded to Oliver's name," Ainsley said softly. "No, he didn't. I noticed that." "No." "Good." Mirel set down the cup. "I noticed a lot of things. The way he watched the door. The way he would start purring and then stop, as if he remembered he was in the wrong place." She looked up. "I wanted it to be true more than I wanted to see clearly. That's a terrible thing, isn't it?" "It's a human thing," Ainsley said. Mirel nodded. "When will you take him?" "This afternoon, if that's all right." "It's not all right, but it's correct. There's a difference." Ainsley swallowed. The stone in her stomach had not dissolved. If anything, it had grown heavier. At 2 o'clock, she returned with the soft carrier. Mirel had folded the wool throw blanket from the sofa and placed it inside the carrier, along with a small tin of the chicken she had prepared the night before. The kitten watched these preparations with alert, round eyes, his tail curled around his paws. Mirel bent down and ran one finger along the top of his head. "You go home now," she whispered, "and you stay there this time." The transfer to the carrier went smoothly. The drive to Thea's house took 11 minutes. Ainsley parked on the street, checked the carrier through the mesh window. "Titum saat sin, yitadovi koma sin e." 2 bright eyes staring back, and opened the car door. What happened next lasted no more than 15 seconds, but Ainsley would replay it in her mind for weeks. She lifted the carrier. As she turned to close the car door with her hip, the zipper of the carrier, which she had checked twice, caught on the edge of the seatbelt buckle. The mesh panel gaped open, just wide enough. The kitten was out. He hit the ground running, a grey and amber blur that shot between her ankles, crossed the footpath, and disappeared behind a rosebush in the front yard of a house that was not Thea's. Ainsley's heart stopped. Genuinely, physically. The world went white for half a second. She did not shout. She did not chase. Years of experience, overrode every screaming instinct in her body. She crouched slowly and set the carrier on the ground with the door open. "Come on," she breathed. "Come on, come on, come on." The street was quiet. A sprinkler hissed somewhere. A currawong called from a rooftop, its voice clear and indifferent. Ainsley could hear her own pulse in her ears. Minutes passed. 1, 2, 3. Each one felt wide enough to fall into. Behind her, a car door opened. Thaya had been watching from the house and had come outside. She was a lean woman in her late 30s, with dark hair pulled back and the kind of face that showed every emotion it had ever tried to hide. Her husband, a broad-shouldered man named Emmett, who looked like he had not slept in days, stood on the porch. "Don't move," Ainsley whispered without turning around. "Stay exactly where you are." And then, a breeze. It came from behind Thaya's house, carrying with it the warm, savory scent of something cooking. Thaya, following Ainsley's instructions from the night before, had placed a cloth from the family kitchen on the front step, along with a small fabric mouse toy that the kitten had played with since he was 8 weeks old. The breeze caught the scent and carried it across the yard, past the rosebush, to wherever the kitten was hiding. Ainsley saw the leaves of the rosebush tremble. A small grey head appeared. The kitten stood at the edge of the garden bed, nose lifted, sides heaving. He looked at Ainsley. He looked at the open carrier. He looked down the street in one direction, then the other, as if recalculating every choice he had ever made. Then he looked toward Thaya's front step, where the cloth and the toy sat waiting. And something in him shifted. Not a dramatic transformation. More like a lock turning. A frequency matched. A signal finally received after days of static. He walked, not toward Ainsley, not toward the carrier, toward the step. He sniffed the cloth. He touched the toy with one paw, and a sound came out of him that Ainsley had never heard from a cat before. A low, wavering trill that was half purr and half cry. It was the sound of recognition, of something lost becoming found. Thaya pressed both hands over her mouth. Emmett gripped the porch railing. Ainsley stayed crouched on the sidewalk, tears running silently into the collar of her shirt. When the kitten picked up the toy in his teeth and carried it to the front door, Ainsley knew, not hoped, knew. She stood. She walked to Thaya. "Let's go inside." The front door opened into a hallway that smelled of toast and laundry detergent and something indefinably warm. The scent of a house where people lived loudly and messily and fully. There was a school backpack slung over the banister, sneakers kicked off near the door, crayon drawings stuck to the fridge with alphabet magnets. The television in the living room displayed a paused cartoon, and on the kitchen table sat a cereal bowl with a spoon still in it, abandoned mid-bite. And there, sitting cross-legged on the hallway floor with red-rimmed eyes and a patience that seemed far too large for her small frame, was Nerissa. She was 7. She had her mother's dark hair and her father's broad face, and she was holding perfectly, impossibly still, the way children do when they believe with absolute conviction that one wrong move will ruin everything. The kitten stood at the open door. He looked at the hallway. He looked at the girl. The house was different from the last time he had been here. A new screen on the back door, the faint chemical smell of fresh paint somewhere, too many people holding their breath at once. He hesitated. He took a step back. Nerissa's face crumpled, but she did not move. She placed the fabric mouse on the floor in front of her and pulled her hands into her lap. The kitten watched the toy. He watched the girl. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of the currawong still singing its unconcerned song. Then, so slowly that Ainsley could count the seconds between each movement, the kitten walked down the hall. He sniffed the toy. He sniffed Nerissa's knee. He circled her once, twice, 3 times, each pass a little closer, a little slower, the wire of caution in his chest, loosening one thread at a time. On the 4th pass, he stopped. He pressed his head against the side of the girl's leg and held it there. Nerissa's hand came down, trembling, and rested on his back. The sound she made was not a word. It was something older than words. A breath that carried all the fear and hope and waiting of the past week out of her body and into the warm, ordinary air of the hallway. Nobody clapped. Nobody cheered. Emmett turned away and wiped his face with the back of his hand. Thaya sat down on the bottom stair because her legs would not hold her. Ainsley leaned against the wall and let herself breathe for what felt like the first time in 3 days. The kitten climbed into Nerissa's lap, turned twice, and lay down. It was not the ending Ainsley had imagined. It was better. It was imperfect and fragile and achingly real, and it was enough. But there was still one more door to open, or so. The following morning, the sky over Adelaide cleared to a blue so deep it looked painted. Ainsley slept past her alarm for the first time in months, her body finally releasing the tension it had carried since the afternoon she first knelt on a hot sidewalk and whispered to a kitten under a ute. She was sitting on her back steps with a cup of tea. No rescue calls yet, no emergencies, just the sound of magpies and the neighbor's sprinkler. When her phone buzzed, it was a text from Thea. One photo, no caption. The photo showed the kitten, real name Darcy it turned out, not Briar, asleep on a blue cushion by the living room window. Legs fully extended, belly exposed, mouth slightly open. The morning light fell across him in a warm stripe, and beside him on the cushion lay the fabric mouse toy, tucked under one paw as if he had been holding it when sleep arrived. Nerissa sat on the floor below the window, reading a picture book, her back resting against the wall. She was not looking at the cat. She did not need to. They were simply in the same room, breathing the same air, and that was all that was required. Ainsley stared at the photo for a long time. Then she saved it to a folder on her phone labeled The Good Ones and put the phone down. She did not expect what happened next. At 10:30, a knock came at Thea's front door. Thea opened it to find Mirelle standing on the porch, wearing her oatmeal cardigan, holding a neatly folded blanket. It was the wool throw from the sofa, the one the kitten had chosen to sleep on during his brief mistaken stay at the sage green house. Mirelle had washed it, folded it with the precision of someone who had been folding things alone for a long time, and brought it over without calling ahead. "He liked this," Mirelle said simply. "It should be where he is." Thea took the blanket. The two women looked at each other across the threshold. Two strangers, connected by a small animal and a complicated week. "Would you like to come in?" Thea asked. Mirelle hesitated, then she stepped inside. In the living room, Darcy was still on his cushion by the window. When Mirelle entered, he lifted his head, blinked at her, and went back to sleep. It was not rejection. It was something simpler and more honest than that. He knew her. He was grateful for her kindness. But this was where he belonged, and he no longer needed to pretend otherwise. Mirelle sat in the armchair Thea offered and accepted a cup of tea. Nerissa, who had been informed in the vague and gentle way that parents explain complicated things to 7-year-olds, brought out a plate of biscuits with the seriousness of a small diplomat. "He watched the door the whole time he was with me," Mirelle said, stirring her tea slowly. "I told myself he was just nervous, adjusting. But he wasn't. Was he?" "He was waiting." Thea shook her head. "I think he was." "I knew," Mirelle admitted. "Somewhere under all the wanting, I knew. He never settled the way a cat settles when he's home. He was always half somewhere else." She took a sip of tea and set the cup down with care. "It's strange how much you can learn about yourself from an animal who isn't yours. He showed me that I've been sitting in my own house the way he sat at my door, looking out, waiting for something to change, but not doing anything to change it." The room was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that holds weight, that sits between people like a third presence, not uncomfortable, but full. "I've been thinking about volunteering," Mirelle said, "at that animal rescue." "Ainsley's group," Thea smiled. "I think she'd love that. I'm not sure I'm ready for another cat of my own. Not yet, but I could foster. Hold them for a few days, give them a clean sofa and some chicken and a radio that plays old songs." She glanced at Darcy. "I seem to have a talent for making lost things feel temporarily safe." Nerissa, who had been listening with the uncanny attentiveness of children who are supposed to be reading, looked up from her book. "You could visit him," she said. "Darcy likes visitors. He sits in your lap if you stay still long enough." Mirelle looked at the girl. Something in her face softened. Not just the expression, but the whole architecture of her features, as if a wall she had been maintaining for years eased a fraction of an inch. "I would like that," she said. Ainsley heard about the visit that evening in a phone call from Thea that lasted 20 minutes and covered everything from the blanket to the biscuits to Nerissa's impromptu invitation. When Thea told her about Mirelle's interest in fostering, Ainsley laughed, the first real laugh she had managed all week. "Tell her to call me," Ainsley said. "Oh, we always need Fosters, especially ones with good sofas." When she hung up, she sat on her back steps again and watched the sky turn from blue to amber to deep, bruised purple. The air smelled of eucalyptus and someone's dinner and the faint, clean edge of coming rain. She thought about the week, the kitten on the sidewalk, the hour spent following him through unfamiliar streets, the sage green house, Morel's tears, Thaya's trembling voice on the phone, the carrier that opened at the worst possible moment, the rosebush, the cloth, the toy, Nerissa's hand, shaking, coming to rest on a small, warm back. She thought about the difference between consolation and belonging, how similar they looked from the outside, how you could walk into a warm house and sit on a soft sofa and eat good food and still feel, not wrong exactly, but not right, not home, and how the only way to tell the difference was to pay attention to the quiet signs, the watching of doors, the startling awake, the tilt of the head toward a sound that belonged to somewhere else. She thought about Morel, sitting in her tidy house with the radio playing and the cushions arranged just so, choosing to let go of something she wanted because she understood, perhaps better than anyone, that love was not the same as possession, that sometimes caring for another creature meant accepting that comfort offered was not comfort accepted, and that the bravest thing you could do was open your hands and let the small, warm weight of someone else's happiness walk out your door. At the Sloane house, the evening settled in. Emmett cooked pasta, while Nerissa set the table with the focused intensity she brought to everything. Darcy sat on the kitchen floor, watching the proceedings with his head tilted slightly. Not anxious, not alert, just present. When a pot lid clanged against the counter, he flinched, but did not run. When Nerissa dropped a fork, he looked at it, looked at her, and went back to watching Emmett stir the sauce. After dinner, Nerissa carried him to the living room and placed him on the blue cushion by the window. She spread Morel's blanket over the end of the sofa, tucked the fabric mouse beside the cushion, and sat on the floor with her book. Outside, the first drops of rain began to tap against the glass. The street glistened under the lights. A car passed, its headlights sweeping briefly across the ceiling and then moving on. The church bell, 3 suburbs away, sounded its evening note, faint, distant, barely there. Darcy's ears did not move. For the first time since his return, he did not look at the door. He did not track the sounds of the street. He did not startle or tense or lift his head at every passing engine. He lay on the cushion with his legs stretched out and his eyes half closed, and when the rain grew heavier and the window blurred with water, he simply sighed. A long, slow exhale that seemed to carry the last of his searching out of his body. He slept, not the light, twitching sleep of a cat on borrowed territory, not the cautious doze of an animal keeping one ear open for danger. This was deep, anchored, dreamless sleep, the kind that only comes when every cell in a small body finally agrees. This is where we stop. Nerissa reached up without looking and rested her hand on his side. She could feel his breathing, steady and slow, a rhythm as reliable as the rain. Somewhere across the suburb, in a sage green house with a brass pineapple knocker and a rosemary bush that needed trimming, Morel Quaid turned off the kitchen radio for the first time in years. She stood in the quiet, really stood in it, the way you stand in a doorway and decide whether to go in or go out. Then she picked up her phone and called Ainsley's number. "I'd like to help," she said, "with the fostering. If the offer still stands." "It stands," Ainsley said. "It always stands." Morel hung up, poured herself a glass of water, and sat at the kitchen table. The house was silent, but it was a different silence now. Not the silence of something missing, but the silence of someone deciding what comes next. Rescue, the real kind, the kind that matters, was never about a single dramatic gesture. It was not about scooping a creature from danger and posing for a photograph. It was the slow, unglamorous work of paying attention, of following a confused kitten through street after street without knowing where the walk would end, of making the phone call nobody wanted to make, of sitting on a kitchen floor with printed documents and watching a lonely woman's heart break gently in real time, of trusting against every instinct that screamed for speed and certainty, that the truth would reveal itself if given enough room. And it was about this: a small cat on a blue cushion, a girl on the floor with a book, rain on the window, a blanket from a stranger who became something more, the hum of a house full of people who had spent a terrible week and come out the other side, not unchanged, but whole. Darcy slept deeply, completely, without reservation. And outside, the rain kept falling, steady and soft and unhurried, washing the streets clean, carrying the last of the autumn leaves into the gutters, making everything new.